So welcome again to today's training. This training is part of a series that helps sort of focus on strategic issues and also on sort of new and different technology options. Tech Tips tends to be a relatively fast-paced and hopefully fun experience for all of the presenters and as well as for the participants. On our panel today, we have Kim Marshall, who's the Content Development and Project Manager at Arkansas Legal Services Partnership. We also have Talley Wells, who's the Disability Integration Project Director at Atlanta Legal Aid. We have Tony Liu, who is the Citizenship Works Project Coordinator at the Immigration Advocates Network, and Jessie Posilkin, who is the Training and Implementation Specialist at the Legal Services Corporation. Again, my name is Xander Karsten. I'm the LawHelp Program Coordinator here at Pro Bono Net. And with that, I am going to hand it over to Kim as soon as I can find her.
Great. I'm glad to be here today, and thanks to Xander for inviting me once again to offer my 10 tech tips for back to school. We all know that in classes, there is a lot of reading required, and that's not going to get any smaller, particularly as you max out on classes or take summer reading, and there never seems to be enough time. So there is a handy website and app called spritzinc.com in which you can learn how fast you read. So let me exit out of that, and I'm just going to go to the website directly because that's a lot easier. So you can test yourself with Spritz and see what your speed is for reading, whether that's 250 words per minute, 300, 500, all the way to the illustrious 1,000. You're a superhero now. And you can see exactly how fast it goes. And what's great about Spritz is that you can see, I'm going to pause it, that it also utilizes colors in order to help you read along faster so you can build up your speed. What's really great about Spritz is that now it's getting incorporated into other websites. So on my next slide, you can see that on readsy.co, which is the next site that I'll go to. You can
Could you
enter
speak
your
up just a little bit?
Yeah, sure. Sorry, guys.
Excellent. Thank you.
So Readsy is incorporating the Spritz Incorporated widget. So you can enter a URL, upload a file, or paste some text and hit Readsy. And this enables you to read faster. So one of the example PDFs that exists online, if you only had this on your computer, you can upload it as well. But I'm just going to take that URL, and you can see drop it into that Readsy link, submit it. It takes some time to download, or rather upload all of that text. And then you can click Readsy. You can see that the screen goes. There we go. And then you can see that it's dropped it all right down into this nice little box. You click Readsy, you set the words per minute that you can read, and it goes. So it helps you read a little bit faster, actually a lot faster, particularly as you go. So if you're like, okay, that's too slow, you can actually click on the words per minute and see that it goes faster, and it helps you absorb a lot of text, particularly for people who skim and you're like, oh, I can't remember what I actually read. This isn't just about reading faster, but about identifying the key information and absorbing it. And then on this next slide, you can see that what always distracts us, though, from all of our reading is just the internet in general. You start going on crack.com, Tumblr, Twitter, you have a Facebook conversation with your mom, and you realize that it's 3 hours later, YouTube distracted you, Netflix, you decided that instead of reading your assignment or finishing your paper, you really wanted to marathon a new show that your friends just gave you. You can stay focused. There are plenty of extensions and plugins and add-ons in Firefox, Chrome, Safari that help you block these sites. And it's not an easy workaround so that you can say, well, after that hour, I really want to go back to that site. So you can download these and then install them, and it tells you it's a productivity tool so that you won't waste hours on these sites. And then you can block them for a specific set of time. So if you're like, I'm going to focus, I'm going to get my paper done, then you can block Facebook, Twitter, and it won't let you unblock it within the settings. The next slide is when we're talking about all of this reading, there's a lot of citations that go with that. And there's a website called zotero.org. What's really great about that, let's see, we can still see Readsy, is at zotero.org you can download it for Firefox or you can download it for Windows if you use another browser. What's really fantastic about it is, like here on the Accessing Justice, which once we've read it, we realize, hey, this is a really great article. I can use it for that paper that I have to write. I have Firefox here, as you can see. There's a little Z when you download it that incorporates right into the browser. So when you click on that, you can see that it brings up this nice, handy guide. So there's a quick guide and all of that. And then you can add items by identifier, by note. So on the current page I'm at, I'm just going to create a note. And then you can see that it drops it all in there. You have a library of information right here. So if you're like, okay, I have economics class paper here, a literature paper, and a history paper, you can organize your library so you can easily access information. What's also great about Zotero is that right here to the left, there's a lot of functionality so that you can look at the notes, you can edit them. If you right click, you have even more, so you can view the PDF online. So if you're on another site and you realize you closed out of that tab and hadn't intended to, then you can move the item and create a bibliography from it, view it online, show the file. And make notes as needed and add any tags that you need to as well. What's also great about Zotero is that you can, when you go to a website, it identifies it as information that you might want. So in the address bar, you can see that you can save that metadata. So on the Smithsonian Science website, for example, I just click on that and it automatically brings all the information I want right into that bar. So you can see it on LeafSnap, a new mobile app, and the blog post. And you can see that it has an abstract. It automatically fills in things like title, the URL, the date that you accessed it, or any dates that you modified it. What's really handy too about technology and making our lives easier is that there are also there are apps that you download. So all you have to do is enter in the ISBN of the books, separate it with a comma, and it automatically pulls all the information. And then you can tell it whether you want MLA style or Chicago translation, big text Wikipedia, and you can automatically get the citation that you need. All right there, easy to do. And then you can drop it into your bibliography.
Okay.
Excellent. We can see it now.
Great.
Okay, great. Okay, so on AutoBib, let me follow along as well. AutoBib and EasyBib.com means that there are apps that you can download on your phone or smart device, and you can scan the code in order to get the citation that you need. You can also go online if you're like, okay, I have the ISBN of the book. For some reason the app wasn't working on your phone or you lost connection, then you can enter the ISBN of the book to get the citation. On the next slide, you can see what we hear a lot about is learning another language. What I really love about Duolingo is not just that it's accessible via my phone because I am constantly moving everywhere. It's that it understands the way that we learn language. So it's geared towards learning, for right now, Spanish, Danish, Irish, French, Italian, German, Portuguese. Dutch is only online. You can also do these exercises online, but the exercises are interactive, so you can listen, you can speak into your device if you have your microphone enabled so that you can test your pronunciation. It uses visual, so it uses pictures, it uses sound, it uses multiple choice in order to help you learn language and retain it. And what's great about it too is that sometimes things happen and I've taken really, really long breaks, like weeks and months and months. And the way Duolingo is arranged is that it has like little life bars, so to speak. So the longer that you take where you're not practicing the language, it says, hey, maybe you want to come back to this, and does it on an algorithm all on its own. So you can go back and then you realize, oh, wait, I learned more than I thought I did, and I remember certainly a lot more than I thought I did. The next slide, when for all those folks who have to do graphics or presentations, what WordMarket allows you to do is that it takes all the fonts on your computer and you can see exactly what it looks like. So here on the slide, I would demonstrate, but where WordMark is where you would place your word, and then it takes all the fonts that are on your computer and gives you this nice handy graphic of what it would look like, but not just a handy graphic. It lets you know that, hey, this is Arial Black, this is Arial Narrow, this is what Arabic typesetting looks like, this is what Verdana looks like, which one do you think looks best? And you can see it all right there. You can change the font, you can do a filter, make it negative, make it all caps if you want to. You can see all of that within that easy black bar. On the next slide, we've all been in that situation where we're writing and we realize there's that word, the thing with a thing on it that's blue. What's great about onelook.com and a site like chir.ag is that it helps you. So you can say, hey, I know it starts with BAG, and it gives you an entire list of words like that. OneLook.com reverse dictionary, what I love about it is you can describe the word and get you can use the definition and get the word that you want, or at least similar words. You can say contains, it ends with. If you have any of that information, then it can give you the list of words that you want, to make it easier so you're not struggling, being like, I know it's that one word, I just can't think of it, and asking all your friends. On the next slide, with Microsoft Office, there are alternatives, and they work just as well. LibreOffice is free. In fact, all of these, Google Drive, Kingsoft, Libre, OpenOffice, NeoOffice for Mac, are all free open source software that you can download. What's really fantastic about all of these is not just that they're a Microsoft Word alternative, it's that they also can open Microsoft Word documents. So if your teachers give you information or something at work and it's only in a Microsoft DocX file or Doc file or PowerPoint, you can still open it in all of these programs and edit your document and submit them. On the next slide, it's just a fun little one, myfrenchfood.com, because in college I remember being like, I can't go to the cafeteria, but I have these random things. I don't know why. I have an avocado, and for some reason a friend gave me an apple. What's really fun about myfrenchfood.com is that you can click these check boxes here that you can see under Quick Kitchen and say, okay, I have flour, I have some random apples and an avocado that a friend left over that one time, and beer. And then you can see that once you click on submit, it brings up a list of all the things that you can make if you have the time. So I can make some mashed potato muffins, some eggs and banana pancakes if I have eggs and banana. And it's just a handy way to do something different and get to use what's in your fridge as well before it spoils. And that's all my tips.
Great. Thank you so much, Kim.
Thanks.
Just a couple of just additional tips that Kim's presentation made me think of on just kind of productivity in general. The first one, and this was volunteered by some folks here at Pro Bono Net when we did our own sort of productivity tip staff lunch, different ways to take notes and just really quick either iconography, or if you're just taking notes by hand, some kind of just consistent symbols that you can find. Michael Hyatt did the ones for Smart Notes, and the web address is right there. But sort of things to think about when I know I take a lot of handwritten notes on meetings or on calls, and these can really help kind of draw my eye to what's important, what I need to do, what other folks need to do. The other one that that I was thinking about was coffeetivity.com for those of us who really like to work in coffee shops and cannot work in coffee shops at work. This gives you the same sound effects and some of that white noise or background noise that coffee shops provide, and it's a fun and can be a really helpful site at coffeetivity.com. And then I had a couple of just email hacks that for folks who use Outlook as I do. One of the life-changing moments was when I found that I could copy and paste attachments from one email to another, and you do that by just highlighting the attachment, using the keyboard shortcut to copy, and then going into another email, and just in the body of the email using the keyboard shortcut to paste, and it literally just pastes the attachment from one to another for when I am downloading one attachment, or I want to send an attachment to somebody else who's maybe not in my original email. It means that I don't have to download it, save it, then upload it to a new email. Also, for those of us, especially those of us who are working on the West Coast or really any time zone that's not Eastern time zone and work with other folks, you can show a second time zone in your Outlook calendar by going to Options, Calendar, and Time Zones. For me personally, I became an attorney because there was no math on the LSAT, and so this really helps me from having to figure out what the time is in another time zone. And then for Gmail, I've used boomeranggmail.com, and essentially what this does is it provides a chance. You can send out an email or schedule an email, and it will both provide the ability to send out emails to other people at a certain time. So oftentimes I will schedule an email to go out to a friend or out to somebody else ahead of time, so I can just compose it right while I'm thinking about it, but maybe I need it to go out next week. I can also forward emails that I don't need to deal with right in that moment to come back and hit my inbox as a new email at some time in the future. So it helps to kind of keep that deferred list of things that I need to do going and keeping that fresh. I also just wanted to point out that Jake Hertz from Pro Bono Net mentioned in the chat box that you can also drag and drop attachments in Outlook. So you can just drag and drop from one email to another to transfer attachments that way. And Brian also just wanted to call out that he recommends Libre or Google Drive and uses both actively. And with that, I'm going to call up Talley to talk about some of his tips for a website launch.
Thank you, Xander. Hello, everyone. I am excited and I'm humbled to talk to you all because I am a non-techie, but I, along with a lot of help from Pro Bono Net and our techie, launched a website this last, just in June, and I feel like I have a lot of lessons learned and tips that come from that, and I think they'll be especially good tips for you if you have the honor of working with non-techie lawyers, as I imagine many of you do, who don't necessarily speak the language and don't have as much context in what goes into developing a website. And I also bring some sort of outside of the tech world tips that I think really helped us to bring into the website. So with that, we'll get started. So next slide. And the first thing, my colleague has a husband who is a website developer, and she told me over and over again, and I did not listen to her to start out with, but she was absolutely right, how critical it was to map out the website from the beginning and over again what it's going to look like, where each piece was going to fit in, and particularly the tree of how each of the links were going to go, where the home page, what were going to be the main subpages, and what was going to be inside those subpages as a non-techie. I just sort of had this vision of these are the things I wanted to share on the internet, and did not at first sort of really think through audience, think through how it was going to be organized. And coming up with just a simple Google Doc, I suggest using some sort of document platform, and Google Docs is probably the best one that I'm aware of, where you can actually share the document back and forth. You can edit it in real time, where you can actually see each other's edits as it's going on. But to really map it out and think through and use websites, some of the favorite websites that you're going to sort of use as a model for your website, to think through each little detail. At the very start, are you going to have a logo? And what is your website actually going to be called? And are you going to have a blog? Are you going to have an FAQ? Where are these going to go? Where is social media? How is that going to be part of the website? And I'm going to talk about the use of social media and launching in a minute. But I think the more you can drum into your non-techie how critical it is to map it out and to really think through sort of how the website's going to be organized and how your audience is going to want to and be able to really easily go from one place to the other and want to stick with your website and come back to your website is really important. And it's also critically important for accessibility. I'm the director of our Disability Integration Project. This was going to be a disability website, and of course accessibility was going to be critical. And mapping it out is also critical if you're really going to have an accessible website, because the more you can do ahead of time, the better. So if we'll go to the next slide. So it's important to go ahead and get the best site checklists. We've got some just quick examples here, but you really want to think through all of the different pieces that are going to go into the website, whether it's going to be just the simple icons, whether you're going to be using YouTube, what kind of color schemes, and whether the website is going to be responsive. To really think through all of that before you really start developing the website, because all of those decisions are so much easier ahead of time than they are after you've actually started to develop the website, and then you go back and want to think through it again. And again, that's something that probably comes naturally to almost everyone in the audience, but it's not going to come naturally to people like me who are just getting into it. And so really, I think that this tip is really about preparing or working with someone who has the vision for a website, wants to develop a website that you're going to work with, and who is going to need these sort of very basic tips to be successful. And going to the next slide. It is critical to get your non-techie to learn enough to be dangerous, to point them to the websites that will enable them to truly understand both enough at the very beginning so that you can have a good conversation with them about how to run the website, but also how, if you're using the Pro Bono Net and you're using their web platform CSS, then how that actually works, and that they have some access to it early on so that they know both what it can do, but for me it was also really critical to learn what the limitations were, and then what all the workarounds, to begin to figure that out, so that when I was in conversation with Jillian at Pro Bono Net, with Kristen in my office, that I had the ability to know what they were talking about when they suggested workarounds, and how the website really could be created. Because as much as possible, you're going to want the non-techie to become a techie so that they can really sort of develop the website. And the more you can point them to places where they can learn this information and not just go to sort of all the LSN tab presentations, but specific sites, the better. Next slide. So here's one of my, from the outside world into the tech world suggestions. We had an awesome full day where we got a volunteer photographer. I brought about 40 of my friends from the disability rights community, and we had a photo party. And we had already created this, this social media campaign called I Am Olmsted. And Olmsted is the name of the United States Supreme Court decision, which is the basis of my work. It's the most important disability rights decision. And we had folks with quadriplegia, folks with muscular dystrophy, folks with developmental disabilities, traumatic brain injury, who really have always celebrated Olmsted and wanted to be a part of an Olmsted website come, and we had releases prepared for them. And I suggest just a very simple release that you run by an attorney in your state, but that essentially gives your organization the right to use the photos and depictions in any way that you choose within the website, or however you're going to use it. And this really created an amazing array of pictures that we could use throughout the website. And it also caught on so that we were taking these I Am Olmsted signs to events, we had StoryCorps come to the Capitol, and people came to that. And we had other photographers who were sending me their pictures, and we had to chase down and find the people to get releases from them. But they were sending great pictures. And, of course, the better photographer you can get, obviously the better pictures you'll have. But to have that kind of supply of photos to develop a website has been a real boon to building the website. Next slide. So as I said, it's critical to plan accessibility from the start. In another context, if you want to put an elevator into a home or a building after the home or the building is already built, it is 10 times, 20 times more expensive than if you put it in when you build the home or the building. In the same way, if you're going to build an accessible website, which I encourage all of you to do, and which is often legally required as well, you're going to want to know all of the ways in which the website should be accessible ahead of time. So the place to start, in my mind, for that is to go to the WebAIM, which is run by Utah State, and to look at their simple training materials. I didn't understand everything I was reading at first, so I had to go back several times, but to go ahead and just get a basic understanding of web accessibility right from the start, and make sure whoever you're working with, especially if they're non-techie, understands this as well, because again, building it from the start is much better. The Wave tool is a great way to go ahead and put in the starts of your website or a mock-up of your website. I believe we used Google Doc and even just sort of use that to go to the Wave, use that address to use with the Wave tool to check out the color schemes and the other sort of basic things that are necessary to make sure your website is accessible early on. Next slide. Y'all know this, but to target your audience, again, if you're working with a non-techie, or if this is your first time developing a website, or even if you've been doing it for a while, it's as you develop the website early on, thinking about what your audience is looking for, and then not only think about them, but involve them. And I think this is what we did that was really successful, was involving as many people as we could in thinking through the website, getting excited about the website, and then using social media to share about the website, and even just simple emails to share about the website prior to its coming on. So there was a tremendous amount of energy and excitement. We used the megaphone for our community. There's a guy named Mark Johnson at the Shepherd Center here in Atlanta who is very tied into the national disability rights groups throughout the country. And he was sending out emails starting 6 months before we launched our website that the Olmsted Rights website was coming, that I Am Olmsted campaign was happening. We built an I Am Olmsted Facebook page because I Am Olmsted was going to be a part of our website and was sort of the centerpiece of the social media campaign. We built the I Am Olmsted and launched it January 1st, when we were going to not launch our website, or didn't end up launching our website till June, and had about 90 likes in the first couple weeks. But then Mark Johnson sent an email out throughout the country, and we went from 90 to about 400 likes on the website in a week. And so everyone and most of the disability organizations sort of knew that our website was coming. And so I think having that sort of launch pad really can help build an audience for the website. And certainly if you build a website, you want people to come to it. Next slide. And then building partnerships for content and promoting. Again, these are both sort of tech and non-tech tips, but we built a partnership with StoryCorps. StoryCorps is, in fact, I got a call today from StoryCorps. StoryCorps is a national organization that records interviews of people interviewing, one person interviewing another person, telling stories from their life, and they are particularly interested in partnering with organizations that are doing interesting things. It could be the Red Cross, it could be our organization at Atlanta Legal Aid, or it could be disability. And they were willing to come out and record for free an event that we had at the Capitol of people who had disabilities, telling their story of their life, particularly who had been in institutions and gotten out, which is what Olmstead is about. And then they allow you to take those recordings and put them on your website up to 5 minutes. You've got to make sure to sign certain contracts. What we did, because we wanted to make sure that it was accessible, and one of the keys for accessibility is going to be ensuring that there is closed captioning. And we put the StoryCorps recordings on YouTube, and that way we were able to use their closed caption device. And the way we did that was by using a slideshow of pictures of the individual who was being interviewed. We made a partnership with Making a Difference magazine, which is Georgia's disability main magazine. I did a series of articles that corresponded with the website and let people know about the website while doing the articles. The Carter Center I'll talk about in a second. We also built a partnership with a video company that did a whole video around Olmstead that we've been able to put on our website, and that we also used in our event. So I'm using a lot of these sort of cross-media platforms to promote the website. And then next year's the 25th anniversary of the ADA. There's a whole website called the ADA Legacy Project, and we've been able to work with them to promote each other's websites while we're launching. Next slide. So I think one of the ways that we really wanted to be accessible was we wanted somebody to come in and do an accessibility audit before we launched, but we knew when we launched we weren't going to be a complete website, that it was going to be somewhat of a soft launch, that we were going to have enough to have a really good website, but we were going to hide certain things like our podcasts, which weren't quite ready, and that we would want to have another accessibility audit afterwards. And there's lots of organizations that do accessibility audits. We contacted this particular organization, and they were kind enough to do a pro bono for the first one, and then we had a competitive bidding process to go forward, but they did a fabulous job for us, and they were able to specifically tell us not only where we weren't accessible, they were able to tell us what steps to take to make our website accessible. And they also used all sorts of different technology tools that individuals with disabilities would be using, whether if they were sight impaired or if they had hearing impairment, that they would be using to access our website to make sure that for all people with disabilities that our website was accessible. But it's essential for a website not only to be accessible, but to be inviting for people with disabilities. It's much better not just to sort of meet standards, but also do your best to really invite people with disabilities. Next slide. And finally, I think one of the things that really worked for us was we timed our launch with an event, and we had a 15th anniversary celebration at the Carter Center, and had 200 people come and launched our website in the same week that we had a major event at the Carter Center. And we're able to kick off our website by telling people about it who came to a major event and all the people who knew about the event. And I'll close there. Oh, yeah, we'll skip the keep it fresh, but always keep your websites fresh.
Thanks so much, Talley. And I just wanted to call out a couple of comments in the comment box. Sun Kim talked about using Subtitle Edit to make your own SRT file for videos. And Brian also wanted to call out that there's a guide on the lsntap.org site right around web accessibility that breaks it down. It's by Brian and Liz Lehman. So thank you both for that. And as we were talking about sort of starting up your own site and looking at that, I had a couple of just really quick tips for wireframing the way that your screens will look. I've used a site called mockups.com. Again, all of these URLs are in the slides that you can find on the SlideShare site. And this essentially allows you to just get a sense of how things will lay on your website and on the different pages. I particularly liked this site because it lets you save projects, so you can come back and change the way things look as you go forward and as your site develops. Also, there are a couple of mobile phone simulators so that you can see on your desktop the way a site will look on a mobile phone. There's one, the iPhone 5 csimulator.com, which I particularly like and really enjoyed working with. Also, there's one for Android phones, the mobile phone emulator.com, and both of those will help you kind of get a sense of the way your site looks for mobile devices. And with that, I'm going to hand it over to Tony.
My tips are not quite as unified around one project as Talley's were, but I just approached this presentation with just thinking about like all of the productivity tools I wish I had when I was a student, and thinking through kind of how these tools would have helped me out a lot. So the first tip I have is a website called Trello. It's a service that is actually meant to be a project management tool. And the reason I'm a big fan of Trello is that one of the things I didn't realize when I was in school was that I'm a very visually oriented thinker. And because in school, one of the first things you learn about taking notes or writing reports is that you have to create an outline, and it has to be hierarchical and top down. And when I discovered Trello, it kind of changed the way I think about how I envision projects and manage them. So the way Trello works is you can create boards. So this is all of the different boards that I have, and you can see I have quite a few of them. And then within each board there's lists. So each column represents a list, and then within each list you can have cards. And this was actually modeled on a physical system of software development, the Kanban system, which actually was originally developed by an engineer at Toyota to kind of, it was designed to kind of help that production system kind of be really efficient in terms of thinking about demand and the inputs that you need. And the way it's morphed in software development is that it allows you to kind of visualize the project and all of the work in progress that's happening. And so each card can be a task or a project. In this case, I was using it to map out this presentation. So you can just create these cards, and these cards can be dragged from column to column. So not only is it very visual, it's kind of got this physical, tactile component to it that allows you to feel like you're interacting with a physical item as opposed to some abstract code item of like made up of zeros and ones that we typically tend to do if we're trying to create a list in, say, Microsoft Word. The other piece of Trello that makes it really indispensable for me in some ways is when you work with a big team of people, and particularly in, sorry, I'm having trouble with, there we go. When you're working with a team of people, and I'm currently working on a project that involves people in South Africa and in San Francisco, sometimes you need to have these collaborative tools that actually really allow you to communicate really effectively and efficiently, and try to keep things from everything being trapped in an email on 20 different topics. So what Trello allows you to do is you can assign people to cards. So this is a detailed view of a card, and you can see here I have Kevin, my project manager in San Francisco, and myself represented by this turtle assigned to this. You can create, there's a description section where you can have formatted text, and you can also have within each card checklists. So for example, in this one, you can create as many checklists as you want, and then within each checklist you have items that you can check off as you go. You can also assign a due date to the card. And then the best part for collaboration is that there's an activity stream. So you can see that it automatically records actions I've taken. So when I created this card, when I move a card from one column to another, when I completed tasks, but you can also create comments. So again, going back to this other board, I'm able to add comments. Now, anyone who's assigned to this card or who is subscribed to this card would get a notification either in email or actually they would, if you have the mobile apps, and there are mobile apps available for Android, iPhone, and iPads, you can set it to give you a notification. And so in a lot of ways, you can take all of that communication out of email and have it relate to specific subtasks, subprojects that you're working on with somebody. So that's Trello. The next thing I'm going to demonstrate is something you're going to see me do a lot, and that is a great feature in Windows, and something that you can add to a Mac if you use a Mac, which is the ability to snap and resize windows very quickly. This is actually built into Windows 7 and Windows 8. It's called AeroSnap. And for the Mac, I have a tool called Better Snap Tool installed. It's hard to describe this, so I'll just kind of show you how it works. I use this a lot to compare two documents or to put two documents side by side. So let's say I have these two Word windows open, and typically, like right now, I actually use this all the time. It's become indispensable. I have probably like 13 different windows on my computer open. If I want to see these windows before I discovered this, I would have to, okay, I got to resize this one, drag it, and get it to be somewhat around half the page, and then trying to find the corner that you can grab can be a pain. And so what AeroSnap and Better Snap Tool do is they allow you to just drag towards the edge, and when you see that animation show up, when you let go, it'll just resize it to fill half the screen. And then I can do that with the other document, and now I'm comparing two documents side by side. So this is great to just quickly manipulate your windows. The other thing you can do is drag to the top and let go, and it will fill the screen. And some apps, I think Word does not do this, but some apps will actually remember the dimensions and size of the window originally and re-snap it back to the original size when you drag it away. So that's AeroSnap and Better Snap Tool, and those have become actually indispensable to me, and almost as indispensable as, say, like the mouse wheel or the swipe action on a phone. The next tip I'm going to share is mind mapping tools. So there are a lot of mind mapping tools out there. This is an example of a few of them. MindMeister and Coggle are web services. MindNode is one that I use on the Mac and also has an iOS app. And MindJet is available on Windows. There's no shortage of different tools that you can choose. And the reason I have started using mind mapping tools a lot is, again, I mentioned I've discovered that I'm a visual thinker, and this helps me to do brainstorming and also take notes very quickly. Instead, one of the problems with brainstorming in a typical Word document or say like an outline is that there's an implicit hierarchy because we have to read left to right, top to bottom. And that hierarchy can kind of impose a structure that you may not want. And so mind mapping is something that just allows you to kind of be a little bit more freeform and capturing ideas. And then later you can go back and clean this up. And the thing about mind mapping that I find really helpful is that this is really just another way of looking at an outline. So a lot of these tools, including MindNode, which I use, allow you to export your mind maps as as an outline. And so you can see this is a mind map of a brainstorm session I had about trying to think through a logic tree that I had to create. Xander already mentioned a similar tip. I use an app called Noisely. It's actually a website, but also a mobile app a lot. We have an open office here at Pro Bono Net, and you guys may actually be able to hear other people on calls around me. And so oftentimes when I'm working on something where I really need to concentrate, I'll fire up this website or pull up the app on my phone. And you can have it generate white noise, pink noise, brown noise, so typical sort of like static kind of noises that can help mask or mute sounds around you. But you can also have sounds like rain, thunderstorm, wind blowing through trees. There's a coffee shop setting, and you can actually layer them on top of each other. So if you wanted to have a coffee shop in the middle of a thunderstorm, you could do that. So that's actually become my favorite background noise generator, but another one I used to use is called Simply Noise. The next tip I have is plain language calendaring. So the way this works is if you have an app or service that uses this, you can just type the words dinner with Brian next Thursday at 7, and the app will create an event in your calendar, and you don't have to mess around with all the fields and the drop-downs. And I took a look, and typically when we create a calendar event, we have to maybe click into 4 or 5 different fields and either type or select from a drop-down just to create a calendar event. And then if you're adding invites and all of those things, that adds a lot more clicks. So I want to demonstrate. I use one called Fantastical. So if I do here, dinner with Brian next Thursday at 7 p.m., you can see it populated dinner with Brian as the subject and then selected next Thursday at 7 p.m. automatically for me. So, this has become kind of indispensable for me in terms of quickly creating calendar events instead of, dealing with all of those fields. Are we still seeing my screen? I think every time I quit out of.
Yep, we can see your screen, Google
Okay.
Authenticator.
Great. Actually, I'm going to go back one slide to show the apps that are available that I'm aware of. So on Mac, the gold standard for that is Fantastical, but there are other calendar apps on Mac and iOS that also have that plain language calendaring. It's being built into more and more apps natively. And then Sunrise Calendar is one that I found that's a web-based calendar that also has an Android and iOS app that synchronizes. The next tip is Google Authenticator. Web security has been in the news a lot lately, especially with things like the recent Home Depot hacking, and we hear about it quite often. So I've been using this for a while. It's Google Authenticator, and what it does is it creates two-factor authentication for a lot of different services. the best practice for actually really strong authentication, meaning like getting access to something, so like your password to your email, for example, is one-factor authentication. Two-factor authentication would be you enter your password, and then you also have to enter in a code on something that you have. So the best practices that are recommended is three-factor authentication. So it would be something you know, like a password, something you have, like a code from an authenticator, and then something you are, like your fingerprint. We're not quite at the point of having fingerprint scanners or retina scanners on all of our devices, so two-factor is probably the most likely sort of best place that we can land at this point in time. But with Google Authenticator, you install it on your mobile phone. This is a screenshot from my iPhone. And then you can connect it to different websites and services. So you can see a list there. There's Google Apps, Facebook, Dropbox. And then when I log into, say, Dropbox on my computer, if it's a computer that it doesn't recognize and trust, it will ask me to enter the code in on my authenticator. And then what I'll do is I'll open up the app, look at launch the authenticator, and enter that code. And that code is based on the unique device ID on your phone as well as the time. So it's constantly changing. I think the codes only last like 30 seconds or a minute, and then they change. And so this would prevent anyone who manages to get your password from actually accessing, everything in Dropbox or your Google account or your Facebook account. And I'm pleased to note that they also are integrated into LastPass, and I think that's going to be mentioned as a tip later. So if you want double security for your passwords, this is one way to do it. I also am a big fan of this website, the wirecutter.com. It's probably the best site I've found for gadget reviews for several reasons, but the most important one being it's actually written kind of for the mainstream audience. They mostly do comparison reviews, and they kind of identify like what's the best device for a certain budget or for an average person who doesn't have a lot of technical knowledge. I recently actually bought a new Wi-Fi router, and I found my router through this site because they'd gone through about 30 different routers and recommended one in particular. And it's not necessarily the most full-featured or most expensive. They try to actually kind of figure out what the average person needs. I've got a few more tips that I'm going to just kind of zip through. Instapaper or Pocket. This is a mobile app which allows you to clip content from a website and it goes into their server, which you can download to your mobile device to read later. And the best part about it that I've found is that it actually not only saves the content so you can read it offline, it scrubs the content of all of the ads and formats it in fonts that are actually very pleasing to the eye and make content much easier to read. So here's an example. On the left is a screen from the Wirecutter. On the right is what it looks like after I put it into Instapaper on the website, and then a screenshot of what it looks like, that same article when I'm looking at it on my phone. Two more tips. Chromecast. The Chromecast is a great little device that allows you to cast streaming services like Netflix or Hulu or YouTube to a TV. So it's basically a dongle that fits into an HDMI slot. And not only is it a cheap way to do this, I think it's like $30. It's so portable. There's no power supply. You just plug it into a USB port to power it. So a lot of travelers have started taking this with them when they travel, and you can plug it into the TV in the hotel and watch Netflix or whatever service has this available. And then finally, my last tip is monitoring your mobile phone battery. So lately, I've found that my phone was dying very quickly, and I had assumed that it was because my phone was close to 2 years old and that the battery was deteriorating. When I took it to the Apple Store, they did a diagnostic and said the battery is fine. And so actually, what I ended up doing was installing an app called Normal, which analyzes the apps that I use and then tells me which ones are energy hogs. And so you can see here a screenshot where it says, you've got Facebook active. If you kill it, you'll save about an hour and 6 minutes of battery life. And then it has all of these inactive apps that it tells me I should just avoid using those or avoid leaving them open to save more power. So there's similar apps available for Android. Normal, I think, is the one that I found on iOS that kind of best suits my purposes. All right. With that, I think I went over time a little bit. Apologies. I'm going to pass it back to Xander.
Great, and thank you so much. So really quickly, just a couple more tips that Tony's slides and the productivity made me think about, and this sort of rely on some social media ideas. For those of us who have social media as part of our bailiwick and have to do that a lot, there were two tips that I use and I really like. One are monthly writing prompts from nonprofitmarketingguide.com, and they come into my inbox about middle of the way through each month for the next month, and it lets me think about creating social media posts, tweets, etc., or blog ideas for the next month. It sort of highlights what the official month is in honor of, what specific days are. I believe that's where I found out that in July we celebrate Zip Code Day, which is now one of my more favorite holidays. Also, when I use Hootsuite has a blog syndicator, which allows you to actually show either individual blogs or combinations of blogs, and it at least allows me to tweet or post out blogs that I really like and blog articles that I really like much more easily right from Hootsuite. And with that, I am going to pass it to Jessie for her tech tips.
So hi everyone, I'm Jessie Posilkin. I work at the Legal Services Corporation, and you've all been listening very patiently for 55 minutes, so I will move through these quickly to keep your energy up. So most of what I'm going to talk about today, is about data, though I will veer off course a little bit. And mostly I'm going to talk about data because it's 2014, we're in the era of big data, and even though I know these are supposed to be tips, I actually think that everyone who wants to have any kind of proficiency in any technical skill set should have a vague understanding of what data means, what kind of skill sets you can use to play with it, how to manage your data better. I think that there should be sort of a layperson's acceptable knowledge level, and so I'm going to talk through some tools of how you can get there. So the first is a totally free one called School of Data. As you can guess, School of Data is a school about data. So they have a number of courses. My favorite for the layperson, or if you want to do a little learning group at your office, is the Data Fundamentals. And Data Fundamentals, here they are, covers things like what is data, right? It doesn't expect you to know what Excel is. It doesn't expect you to know what a Google spreadsheet is, though if you're on this call, I think you've heard of those tools. And it really starts from the basics of sorting and filtering and goes into math and more in-depth analytics. And it's all hands-on. So you'll read some things, and then you'll actually do worksheets with some open data that they use. So the organization that puts on School of Data does some incredible work, but I think just getting started there would be fabulous. The next thing, if that's not enough for you, is to add in puppies. So I've found here at LSC, I've done a bunch of data trainings, and while everyone laughs a little bit at me and not with me when I introduce puppies, they have always kept people engaged. So if you're either if this is back to school because you're a teacher or back to school because you want to learn more, puppies always make it more interesting. So Tuva Labs is a data sharing service, and they have a number of also lessons around data. And one of them is this Introduction to Data Exploration, which you can use, explore what good data visualization looks like by using dogs. So here I've created, I was on it for all of 2 minutes, and I created a little plot of different dog breeds and whether or not they're good with children. So I have all the dog breeds that are less good for children based on color. This isn't a very good data visualization, but it's fun to play with. Next, there is another online tool called Mode Analytics, and it allows you to store data sets online for other people to access. Whether or not you want to use that, you might want to learn structured query language. Some folks know what SQL is, might have other ways of pronouncing it, but SQL is one of the most basic languages that's used for parsing through data, and it's really, I've started learning it and teaching it here at LSC because it has some really easy to understand language. So even if you're intimidated by learning how to code, if you're intimidated by databases, but you've heard of the word select and the word from, right? Those are both plain English words, and they're also commands in SQL. So I strongly encourage you, if you want to try and learn more, even if you're never going to use it, you just want to think more about databases and how they might work. If you want to learn SQL, the SQL School is really helpful. Again, it's all hands-on, all using open data. You use stock prices, you use football rosters. It's all very accessible data sets to get you to learn more about how these things work. Cool. I can't see the chat, so I don't know if anyone has questions. Next, I love this woman. I've never met her in real life. Her name is Anne Emery. And she has incredible tutorials. They're between 5 and 15 minutes long, and if you want to learn more about Excel in particular, I've used many of her tutorials to craft lessons here at LSC and to learn things myself. So if you've heard of VLOOKUP but don't know what it is, she does a great tutorial. And if you've never heard of VLOOKUP or anything in Excel and you think, you know, I want to learn more, but I don't know how I'm ever going to use it, she also does examples of things that she might want to do. So she has 2 different school rosters, and she wants to combine them, but also check for duplicates. And she uses that example to do some merging. And so I think that it's a really great and useful tutorial, and she is incredibly open. So I encourage you also to, you know, reuse her stuff. Obviously, write to her before you use it for commercial use, but she's really fabulous, and you should take her tutorials. Great. So part of back to school, I think, is also teaching more, whether you're a teacher or not. And one thing I see a lot of is people who have created different kind of how-to guides, right? I see it as from things we purchase, and I see it from some of my colleagues and other organizations we work with. Now, there's a really great product called Screen Steps, which is pretty expensive. And so I like their consumer-level product called Clarify It. It's $30, and it allows you to make really great tutorials by taking screenshots, and as you take the screenshots, it puts them in a document for you. So instead of some people, right, they take a screenshot, and then they need to put it into the Word document, and then they need to write it. This does that step for you. So here's an example. I created a little quick start guide for Concur, which is a travel and receipt management software. And so I was able to do this whole, I think, 15-page guide in probably 20 minutes, which I found really helpful. And so you can buy one $30 license. I think it might be $45 if you want the Mac and PC license together. It lives on your computer, and it will upload them to your own custom website so that you can store all of them online. Great. The last few things I want to cover are some easy plugins that can also make your life a lot easier and also make it easier to teach and learn. So if you can't code, but you want to scrape information from a website, there is a plugin called Scraper. And so as it says here, it's a Chrome extension for getting data out of web pages and into spreadsheets. So sometimes there might be information on a website and you need it in a spreadsheet for something, but when you copy and paste it, it's formatted all wrong. Web Scraper, while it says you can use code with it, you don't need to use any. You really just need to be able to use a mouse to copy and paste, and it will put everything into a formatted Google spreadsheet for you, at which point you can download it into, Excel, or continue to use it there, use it with Fusion tables. And if you just want to start playing with data, that might also be helpful, because you don't need to know much. You just need to be willing to experiment. The next thing, if you don't even want to spend money on Clarify It, is Awesome Screenshot, which is another plugin, which again, oops, nope, that's not what I wanted. If you use Awesome Screenshot, it can just take parts of the page, the whole page, parts of the page that aren't even showing, allow you to edit them and draw pictures. You can sort of see that up here, and then put them into Google Docs or presentations. So that's what I did here. I took a bunch of awesome screenshots and I just dragged them into my presentation. I didn't have to save them and then upload them. It was very easy. Great. OneTab is my #1 favorite discovery of the past year. Lots of us keep lots of tabs open in our browsers and find that it slows things down. And what OneTab does, as you can see here, is move everything into, as it's called, one tab. So it takes all these tabs, it puts them in a giant list, and when you want to go back to them, you can click on each and then reopen that tab. It's really easy. I use it nearly every day, and it just feels like magic because it makes your life easier. Cool. Next is security basics. 2 things that I find really helpful. The first is HTTPS everywhere. So HTTPS everywhere basically makes it so that any website you access, if there's a version that has a secured connection, it will force your browser to default to a secured connection. Again, you don't need to know how to code. You don't need to know really what that means, though I'm happy to teach you anytime. What it does mean is that your browsing sessions will be more secure than they would be without it. So you can install it into Chrome or Firefox. It doesn't work with Internet Explorer because that's the problem with Internet Explorer, but it will make sure that your browsing sessions are secured, and it's pretty fabulous. And then the last one, and I will be done, and you can return to your afternoon or midday, is LastPass. LastPass is, and Dashlane, as I mentioned here, are both password managers. We've just deployed LastPass here at LSC, and we're starting today. We had our first trainings on it. And it's really helpful because it not only saves all your passwords and encrypts them, but it also will generate much more secure passwords for you and tell you how secure your current passwords are. So today I did a demo of it creating, a much more secure password. I don't even need to remember that more secure password. It just saves it for me, and it inputs. Inputs it into the password field. So I find that my life is wildly better with this. I feel similarly about this as I do about OneTab. LastPass, if you are the IT person at an organization, has great enterprise tools. It's not obscenely expensive, and it's also, I think, a really great way to both teach about security but also make it easier for your users to manage their own passwords, because they can have professional accounts and personal accounts that are linked. So already just with today, I think I saw a lot of people, some of whom are on this call, excited about the opportunity to have much more secure online lives without it actually being harder for them. So we may have set harder password requirements, but we're also making their lives easier by giving them access to this tool. So Dashlane is also supposed to be great, but I haven't used it. So that's it for Jessie's Tech Tips, and I will pass it on to Xander to, because I lost Xander.
I'm still
Okay.
here.
I will pass it on to Xander, who can do more tips.
Great, thanks. And I just wanted to follow up. There were a couple of tips that were shared out into the chat box. Brian just wanted to highlight LastPass and HTTPS everywhere are must-have tips. Also, going back to some of the closed captioning, YouTube, as Brian pointed out, has a great free captioning tool on Sun Kim. Also talked about Chrome Canary that shows how Chrome renders on different devices in case you're looking for mobile devices and how a screen would look on those. When we were talking about wireframings, Kenneth Elliott pointed out that Kakao.com is a good wireframing tool if you don't want to work with GIMP. And if you do work with GIMP or you don't work with GIMP, GIMP's another really great option for design work. Also, just wanted to point out that Markall has another great browser plugin for a secure search is disconnect.me. So just wanted to point those out in the chat box for folks. So our final tip is an app that I found for iOS. They also have an Android version from Stop, Breathe, and Think, and it's a guided meditation app that can help you sort of as you're on the, if you're like me and you spend a lot of time on public transit or you're just sort of constantly in some kind of motion, it provides a set of guided meditations that you can select either by going through and selecting the individual meditation or by just telling them sort of, they give you a list of different feelings you may be having, and you can select that feeling, and they'll suggest a meditation. And if you do download this app, just know that if you select more than 5 feelings, it will come up with a screen that says that you have too many feelings, which I have to admit is worth just downloading the app for that particular pop-up. And with that, that ends our 50 Tech Tips. Thank you all for being here. Thank you again to our panel for putting this together and for sharing all this information with us. I hope that folks have found this to be useful. Shared out on the screen in the chat box is the SurveyMonkey survey. Please take a chance and fill out and let us know what you thought about this presentation. Also shared out in the chat box are the where the slides are available, and also the YouTube channel that the video will be shared on. So thank you again for attending, and if you have any questions, comments, or contact information, feel free to contact Brian.